So we had the case in Virginia go to the Supreme Court. Virginia, we filed in that case at the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court issued reversed a stay. That means that Virginia will be removing 1,600 non-citizens from their voting rolls, and nothing's going to come in play before the election. So that was a win. We filed in that as the ACLJ, and we filed again today at the U.S. Supreme Court. And as of right now, we're the only group other than the RNC that filed the lawsuit in Pennsylvania to stop illegal votes from being counted. And of course, this is one of the most key swing states on the East Coast. So in as votes begin coming in, you've got basically Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Scranton, and Erie, and then the rest of Pennsylvania, which is very red. And it's, how much of those areas, and even Pittsburgh itself and the suburbs of those areas, how big is the turnout, and can it compete with what happens, in the Philadelphia suburbs, which is usually more Democrat leaning. But in this case that we have filed, Pennsylvania has a law that says if someone submits a mail-in ballot, any provisional in-person vote they cast doesn't count. So if you sent in your mail-in ballot, you can't just go in and vote again. And because you've got this provisional issue, they've got to figure out, okay, that causes trouble for the state. So it's supposed to make it easy, supposed to be clear. But they're now asking in Pennsylvania, that actually the clear requirements of state law, or can state legislatures actually decide the election rules and decide that you can actually go in and file a provisional ballot, even if you have even if you already have mailed in your ballot. So just not to get it too complicated here, imagine this. You mail in a ballot, and you go in and fill out another ballot. And then so you're making issues for the state, because they then have to figure out, okay, did your mail-in ballot count? And if so, why did you vote this provisional ballot? Did this person do it? Which one's right? Which one was fraud? And this actually gives Pennsylvania those excuses, Will, not to be able to come up with election votes. So the law in Pennsylvania is clear. You can't do it. But Pennsylvania is trying to operate outside the law. And so we're filing, the RNC has filed at the U.S. Supreme Court to say, no, you have to follow the election laws of the state.
That's right. And I think one good thing that we're seeing already in this election cycle is that these lawsuits are happening prior to Election Day. The courts had a lot of cover after the election was over and lawsuits were brought, because they're saying this is already done. We're not going to go back and undo an election based off this. You had plenty of time when you knew that the legislatures or the county election boards were doing things irregular. Now, what is curious here is that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decided to allow this to go through. Yeah, you would think that it would be settled law, and also that they would want it to be less complicated for their state.
I mean, here's how it gets complicated. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said if people's mail-in ballots are invalid for some reason, like they failed to include the required paperwork or signature, they can still vote provisionally despite the law saying they cannot. How would they know that? So there might be a way, and we've helped voters check about their ballots being accepted. That doesn't mean, by the way, that they have been opened yet or checked to see if you've dotted every I and T, which we said is one of the issues with mail-in voting, is that there are a lot of steps. And if you aren't someone who does it regularly, I wouldn't usually do it unless you have to. That's the one you only do if you've got to. And we had to help a voter who got in a mail-in vote and then never got the basically receipt of service and was concerned that the vote did not get received. And we were able, because they contacted an ACLJ attorney at aclj.org/election hotline, which we just launched in those last 72 hours, we were able to go through the process and ensure that their vote had been received. That is different than their vote being opened and check to see if it's compliant. So how on earth then in Pennsylvania, so you're telling everybody who sent in a mail-in ballot they can also go vote again, and then let the Pennsylvania election system figure out which one is the right vote to count? Or you can only count their actual provisional vote if their vote that was mail-in doesn't count. So I mean, this again causes disasters that are it's like unnecessary for confusion, like you said, and complications put in place by these courts to think that they are making it a more fair and equal system, but in fact are the reason why we won't get vote totals and a winner, and it gives Pennsylvania excuse for days. And that is not good for the country. these democracies, and I think in the United States, especially with most of us voting digitally now, there's no excuse for this. There's just no excuse, except for then you see these cases and you go, you know what? Again, it's Pennsylvania. The difference is here, we are out front before, like Will said. And the reason we are able to do that, folks, is because of your economic support. We told you to really, truly open up an election hotline to be able to assist voters in states across the country like we've been doing and are doing. I'm just telling you about some of the stories that we can talk about that aren't in process or different legal, but have already been handled and handled quickly by our team. And it's because you are supporting the work of the ACLJ. And we started this election integrity matching challenge where we could double the impact of your donation right now. And folks, we are utilizing these resources. As I told you, the first round of these resources is for people who need assistance or have questions or problems before Election Day. Then there are going to be a set of resources we're going to be having to utilize on Election Day. Those you have to move very fast. We have 2 cases at the Supreme Court in the last 48 hours. Realize that. That is a lot of legal work at the ACLJ. It is the reason why the case in Pennsylvania, we're the only group that filed other than the RNC. And it is why you need to support and donate today, because we'll also be prepared for all of those potential legal challenges, and we hope we don't have to do them, but let's be honest, we've all seen it in the past. Let's be more prepared than ever before. Plan for the worst case scenario, hope and pray for the best. And that's what you do as attorneys and as lawyers, and what we do at the ACLJ. And so we need that next set of resources for post-election day. And we are using them, folks, so you can donate today. You double the impact. So you donate $25, that's like $50. You donate $100, that's like $200. And that's up at aclj.org right now. And we're utilizing those resources. 2 cases to the U.S. Supreme Court, assisting voters daily as needed all across the country through aclj.org/election hotline.
And Jordan, I do want to reiterate what you're saying is that these attorneys that we have, which are some of the best in the business, we have an incredible team here at the ACLJ. And not only are our attorneys pumping out briefs in record time to be sure that we can get the voice of the ACLJ supporters and members before the Supreme Court, because we know that they care about election integrity and making sure that American people can trust their elections. But it's these same attorneys that, while they're simultaneously doing that, are helping individual people, like that voter that you mentioned in Pennsylvania. We mentioned one yesterday about a voter in California, ensuring that they have the confidence that when they cast a ballot, that their voice will be heard. And that's what we are doing here. We are your voice on social media, on radio, wherever you watch this show, but also at the Supreme Court of the United States, or even just helping you make sure you have the confidence that your vote that you cast will be heard in this election. So that is another reason that you should go support the ACLJ today.
Yeah, I mean, again, whether it's the filing at the Supreme Court out of Pennsylvania, a key swing state, or yesterday, the Supreme Court agreeing with our amicus brief blocking a federal judge's ruling that would have allowed non-citizens to vote in Virginia and kept 1,600 on the voting rolls, when Virginia has become, as you heard from Rick Arnell, a swing state like New Mexico. You're fighting across the country for the integrity of our vote, which is so key to our constitutional republic. Support the work of the ACLJ. Double the impact your donation. We need them, folks, to stay on top of everything. ACLJ.org. Donate today.